Hello, everyone. I'm Dominique.
And I'm Christina, and we are the Connected in Glass podcast.
Every week, we will feature interviews with glass artists who speak to their creative processes and overcoming challenges.
These conversations are real and raw. We hope that by sharing these stories, you're able to find some connection and know that you're not alone.
We just wanted to take a moment to thank you for listening to our podcast. We're super passionate about this project and work for hours every week to bring you this content. So if you'd like to help support us, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/connectedinglass. Also, please consider joining our Facebook group, Connected in Glass Community, where we continue the conversations from these episodes. We'd love to hear from you.
This episode of Connected in Glass is sponsored by Diddy Clips. Diddy Clips has changed the way we film our glassblowing videos, and we're proud to be working with them.
Today, we're interviewing Sibelle Yuksek. She's a glass artist based in LA who's been working with glass since 2012.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey,
Thanks so much for joining us.
thank you for having me. This is really fun. I'm excited to talk to you guys.
All right, we're so excited to get to know you. So first, let's just skip the glass part of your life for a minute. We want to tell us a little bit about where you live, what you enjoy besides glass, and then get us into the story on how you started working with glass.
All right. So currently I'm based in downtown LA in Little Tokyo area. I work from my home. So I have my studio built in, and it's actually a really wonderful setup that I have here. Besides glass work, I really enjoy just being active. So I have a strong yoga practice, and I just like to work out a lot and ride my bike. And I have a dog who I love to play with. And I mean, I have tons of different interests. Like, the possibilities are endless. Like if it has something to do with learning a new skill or being physical, like I'll probably be interested. Like I enjoy jujitsu or rock climbing or just going to the beach. So things like that.
Cool. And tell us about how you
Yeah.
started working with glass.
So, okay, I actually was on a different path when I went to art school. Like, I grew up really interested in Japanese comic books, so manga, and I would draw all the time. That was my main interest. And I intended on going to school to get into perhaps like fashion illustration or editorial illustration. So the program I was in was communication arts, and that was at VCU. And so during my time there, they required us to take a class that was outside of our major. So for summer class, I decided to take like a glass casting 101. And as soon as I started working with the material, I was like, this is crazy. Like, glass is so unique. Like, the properties of it are totally not what I expected. And I didn't even realize people could make careers, doing glass work. And my interest just developed from there. It became sort of like an addiction. Like, I needed to know more about it. And so I ended up making it my second major. And from there, I just continued to work with glass like any way I could.
And so first you started with casting and now you're mostly like primarily a flame worker, right? How did you shift from one way of working with glass to the other?
Oh man, that is like such a financial question. So I was really interested in casting. I focused on that for the first couple of years. I assisted my I guess she was my first mentor, Sayaka Suzuki, and she really, really pushed me. And if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have worked as hard as I did when I was discovering glass. But when I graduated, I needed to get my own studio, and I thought, okay, I can't afford a kiln. They're like thousands of dollars, and then casting and the whole process is just so expensive. So I had taken some flame working classes in school, but I wasn't particularly interested in it at the time. But my uncle gave me his welding torch and he was like, "Hey, you can melt glass with this, right?" And I was like, "Yes." And so he just gave me his welding torch and I just set it up at my friend's studio. And then, yeah, I was just melting glass and making jewelry just because that was what was accessible to me. So flame working ended up taking a dominant role in my life because of just how I could work with it without much of a budget.
And did you find your voice in glass right away, or has it been a little bit of a process, or has it been like a bit of an evolution, perhaps?
Oh yes, always, always. It's a never-ending evolution. When I transitioned from, working mainly two-dimensional into three-dimensional, the compositions that I learned, on a paper translated to the compositions in 3D. And I think that was very beneficial for me, like working through my ideas. And, I've always been very figurative. And so when I was doing the casting work, I would sculpt like birds and objects that you could recognize and associate with. And, when I got into flame working, I started to become a little bit more abstract and, because I really couldn't articulate exactly what I wanted to do at the beginning. Flame working, it takes so long to grasp the process and to be able to like do exactly what you want from the beginning. So I was just making like abstract sculptures that I could put on people or like bodies. And I've always been interested in the body. So I've tried to keep it in my work, whether it was like, adorning the body or, now it's like sculpting the body. But yeah, over time, as I learned how to be proficient in flame working, I was then able to like come back to my original interests in, what I used to draw, and now I can sculpt those objects. So it's kind of been like a full circle.
And when you have a new idea, do you take it to paper first, or are you able to at this point just visualize it, or how do you work through the process of getting new ideas out into glass?
Oh, always, always. Yeah, I've always kept my sketchbook with me, and drawing has never left my practice. So as soon as I think of an idea or something comes up, I instantly I try and draw it and put it on paper so then I can think about it. Usually I'll draw things out, a few times until I get the composition right or the idea right, and I'm still really interested in like, comic book characters or fantasy characters. And so I gather a lot of inspiration from them. And, sometimes glass work can be a bit much. So I took a step back and I was like, I'm just going to paint, because painting is just like a different way of, getting out those creative feelings that, I feel like I couldn't get out with glass. And so I think this year I'm wanting to like put out more two-dimensional work as well as with the glass work. So have them kind of work together and you just let it be organic.
Do you ever feel a time where you feel stuck?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So the thing that I've been struggling with recently is that, I have a lot of production work. So I make a lot of like small smoking accessories that, they're all the same. And so I actually have a really hard time making the same object over and over and over again, even though that's what I've been doing for the past couple of years, like mostly production. And I can easily get creatively burnt out from that. And when I want to work on something creative, I'm literally like, drained of all of my fuel. And sometimes I just like, I just want to dig a hole and like jump in it because I just can't access it or I don't have time or I feel overwhelmed. And so when I hit that block, I tend to want to just like do other creative things like I said before about like painting or just drawing. And it's only when I have like maybe a hard deadline or if someone's expecting something from me, then I can like kind of tap into that. How would you say the like how a time constraint that you're working with makes you like really ambitious. And so I work really well under pressure. So I'm like, I need to have a show or I need to be part of something. And then that's when like my creative juices tend to flow more.
So relatable.
Yeah.
So when you're kind of like in those spaces where it's just really hard, do you have any other tricks that you use to get yourself out of that? Or do you just like seek out something that will put that pressure on you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that without my physical practice, I would definitely be way less motivated, or I wouldn't be able to work through my blocks as easily. So I think like sometimes when I have too much anxiety to work, like I just force myself to either go to the gym or just do like a really intense workout to like get out that anxiety. And I think like when I can hit like a point of calm, then I can like come back to my workbench and think more clearly through these ideas or like the pressure. And so that's really important. And then also like allowing myself to like just not do anything for a certain period of time, because I do have this type of energy that like if I'm not working constantly, I start to create this like negative dialogue in my head where I'm thinking like, what are you doing? Like, you're not good enough. You're like not working hard enough. Like, who do you think you are? And, you know, when I forgive myself for those things and just let myself be for just, you know, like an afternoon or something, like it's okay to not work constantly. Then I can rest after that and then come back to the bench. So, you know, like kind of acknowledging that the negative dialogue isn't working and then like letting it go has been like a active practice that I've tried to, you know, implement at least like recently. I don't know about you guys, but like this whole COVID situation and the state of the world has very like it's definitely put a damper in my life and like in my enthusiasm. So like that's a completely different experience than anything from before. Um, a lot of people I know have had to try and like trick themselves to like look forward to life. I don't know. It's really interesting.
Definitely.
Yeah. I was wondering, do you find that people treat you different as a woman gloss artist? And two, do you find that people maybe like sexualize you as a female artist that does like forms in that way?
You know what? I have been so surprised by how people treat me because I've heard I've heard of where women felt like they were like mistreated in the glass community and felt that they were not taken seriously because of that and it like maybe the content of their work. But I don't know if it's because of my attitude or if it's because I've chosen to ignore certain things that maybe I'm not even aware, but I feel like I've been treated as an equal for most of my career. And I don't know if it started because I worked in a warehouse for a good part of like the beginning of my career with a bunch of guys. And, you know, it was a mixed studio. I was pretty much the only glass blower. And then everyone else was kind of doing other things. And so like I feel like I do enjoy like the shit talking and like the I guess like the masculine side of working in these situations. And so maybe I haven't been as like, how would you say, like I haven't felt that I had like a different place as a woman. Like I've just tried to be like one of the boys. But then at the same time, I embrace my femininity in my work. And I think because I have been able to like make decent work that like no one can really say like a shitty thing about me because I'm like, well, like just let it speak for itself kind of thing. And I've actually been criticized more by other women than the men. And I don't know if it's because they like, for those people who have called me out on like sexualizing my pieces or things like that, felt maybe that I was not representing women the way that they wanted me to. But I'm honestly like working on things that strictly I'm interested in. and I don't really care, who likes it or who doesn't, because I'm gathering my inspiration, like traditional comic books where, these women are sexualized, but they're also like my heroes. And I think that there's something about embracing like the sensuality of women, like the muse, the flow of the body, like the curves, like let it be luscious, let it be fertility and like history, and let it also be modern. And so I think because of I guess like my perspective, like I haven't really let anyone like bring me down at all. So I don't, does that answer the question right?
That was such a good answer. Yeah.
For the other nerdy people who are listening, what are some of the, like, you said that when you started working in art and you were originally inspired by manga, what are some of the originals that really got you into art?
I was like obsessed with Oh My Goddess and like Erd specifically, the like half demon, half goddess character. She was just like everything I love. And of course, like Sailor Moon, hands down. Like you can't deny how much of an influence, that show is. Like, even though how mainstream it is, like I was totally obsessed. And I don't know, all of the Chobbits or Magic Knight Rares or like I mean, even like Dragon Ball Z or like any of the Miyazaki characters, like Princess Mononoke, or I could go. Let's see. Oh my gosh, right now, Saga is like a huge influence for me. Like, and then, oh gosh, like I could go on. There's so, and it's not even just Japanese. It's like also things like Sin City, and it was like this very sexualized version of like Alice in Wonderland, except there's this girl going through this Wonderland, and like she's having all these like really weird like sexual experiences with all the different characters, and like I just love this humor, and I was introduced to it like so young that it was just normalized for me. And so I think that's maybe why I've like never really been like offended by like this like kind of sexual humor that I think that men typically love and like maybe women get offended by, but like I don't know. I maybe that's just why it works for me.
I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you make your income. Like you have your production line and then you do like your art pieces, and like how do you, I guess if you were to make your income into a pie and how you focus your time, like how do you separate it all out?
Oh yeah. Well, so I should I give you a little bit of like a backstory of how I like transitioned, because it's all kind of new to me right
Mhm.
now.
Yeah, we want to hear it all.
Okay. Okay, cool. Story time. Yeah, so when I moved to LA, I like didn't know what I was going to do because I was still in the beginning stages of my flame working career, I guess. I started working at this glass distribution warehouse called Pacific Art Glass. And my intention there was to be like a studio tech, kind of like help out with equipment restoration and things like that. But I ended up getting behind the cashier stand. And so I was like answering phone calls and like not doing it what I really wanted. Like it's very retail, I guess. And so this guy came in, his name's Yuri, and he was like buying all these cases of Boro, and he was like, "Oh, you're new here, like you don't look like you should work here." And then I was like, "I'm an artist." And so I gave him my card, and he was just like, "Why don't you come visit my studio in downtown? It's pretty cool." And so I showed him my work, and then he was like, "Oh my god, like you actually do work with glass." And so he hired me to help him with his, I guess his focus was on interior design and glassware. And at that time, it was only two of him, like him and one other guy. And then he brought me on. And so it was at the very beginning of him like launching his business. And so I started flame working under him full time. And 5 years later, doing that kind of production work, like every single day from like 7:30 in the morning till 4:30 nonstop, was really what like got me to this place where I developed the like language of glasswork. And then this crazy thing happened where right before COVID hit, there was the warehouse, which had like multiple businesses in it. So there were people who were like welding in there. There was a painter, a ceramicist, a girl doing stained glass, and then there was us doing like blown glass and like lighting design. Well, the whole warehouse got broken into, and they opened the gate in the middle of the night, and tons of people came into the warehouse and stole everything. They even used the forklift to like take all the equipment, like the 3D printer, all the computers, and literally the only things that they didn't take were the torches and the kilns, which is so insane. And so like they ended up having to close the warehouse, you know, I mean, simply because we didn't have anything to work with. And then there was an explosion on our block, like literally 2 doors down, a whole place just exploded. And then our ceiling windows came in. And then at that time, I had literally just moved out of that studio to a smaller studio, like just down the block, because I was just starting to like get into my own groove. And so luckily for me, like none of my things were stolen, my personal things, but you know, I felt the effects of that explosion as well. And so then all of our friends who had studios on the block just moved away. And then COVID hit. And so then all of a sudden it was just like done. Like we couldn't work. You know, the studio was in a mess. And so then I was like kind of out of work at that time. So what ended up happening was like I was just like, okay, I just got to get my shit together. And so I started making like little one-off pieces. Like I was making fun of the whole like mask thing at first. So I was making like little mask pendants and like toilet paper pendants because of the toilet paper shortage. And somehow like people were like interested in buying stuff. And so I was like, okay, like it's working. And then, but you know, as the streets became empty, like more homeless people started moving around the block because our studio was kind of near Skid Row. And I don't know if you're familiar with downtown LA, but Skid Row is kind of like the big community of homeless people with the tents and everything. So they started to kind of like spread more as businesses were closing. And so I started to feel a little bit unsafe coming to the studio by myself. So I talked with my boyfriend and we decided, you know, we may as well try and find a place where he could work from home and then I could work from home and we wouldn't have to worry about like what was happening in the world, because we had no idea at the time what was going to happen. So we got super lucky and we found a place in an old Westinghouse building. So it's like a really big industrial, tall ceiling, like open floor plan. And so I was able to set up my studio at home here. And because I think it was like such interesting timing because everyone was at home, you know, they're all like smoking weed more. And, you know, like a lot of people are still working. So they have this income but like nothing to spend on. And so like a lot of people were just like hitting me up for like pipes and joint holders and stuff like that. So I literally never hit a point where I didn't have business coming in. It was like a lot of interest. And I work really closely with this woman, Angela, who runs Elevate Jane, and her company, she distributes a lot of my joint holders. And so I was just working with her and just putting in bulk orders like every week. And if it wasn't for our connection, like, you know, I probably would have had to work a lot harder to send my pieces out. But yeah, she promoted my work a lot. And then I was just kind of like doing one-offs on my Instagram. Instagram is huge. You know, people will hit me up on Instagram and I'll do customs that way. And yeah, so it's been like this really interesting experience, just kind of the way things just landed perfectly in place. Like I was able to very smoothly like just use my own work to just keep living.
That's pretty cool. What does your boyfriend do for a living? Just curiosity on you two both being stuck together through COVID inside working.